Welcome everybody to the new Musicline podcast. My name is Amy and I am the marketeer at Musicline. And this podcast is an opportunity for people to get to know our team a little better, including our writers. Today I am with the incredibly talented Janet Porter and Mike Horth, creators of What's the Crime, Mr. Wolf, The Greatest Show, and finally their brand new school musical, Gladis Baker, Gladiator. So nice to meet you both.
Hi.
Properly.
Hi.
In person. Should we get started?
Yeah.
That's the question. So
fantastic.
Let's get to know each other a little bit more. So can I start off by asking how you first met? How both of you met each other?
Janet, do you want to take the lead?
I'll make a start, yes. I'm an ex-teacher, and when I was working, I used to write musicals for the school that I worked at because it was a very small village school, and I liked at the time to try and include them in with the topic work so that the children were able to sort of feed their knowledge a little bit into the show, and it gave them ownership of the show. And then when I finished working, I thought, people had said to me, your shows were really good, you should try and get them published. And at first I thought, I'm not sure about that. But then thought, well, I'll give it a go. But the trouble was my musical ability was not anywhere near the standard of what I'd like to think was my writing ability. And anyway, I joined a local choir, and Mike was the MD at the choir, and still is indeed. And I approached Mike and asked him what he thought of one of the musicals that I had, and whether he thought he could deal with the music side of it. And I'd written sort of simple tunes for the songs, but they needed arranging, they needed orchestrating, and they needed a lot of work. And that's how we first got together.
Yeah, I think initially you said, I've got me songs from the show, I just need some sheet music, because I think you were intending on sending off some, having a kind of published looking sheet music,
yes,
and sending
that's
it off. And then when I started to work on the songs and creating kind of the actual arrangements on the page, I thought these songs are really catchy. They're really, really good. And I said to Janet, I think to really kind of maximise your potential of somebody noticing these, we need to kind of orchestrate them. Mm-hmm. So then suddenly I started building tracks. It's quite orchestral, that show, the first one we did. And then we got a friend of mine who's a session singer. It's quite a well-known leading lady in the West End, and she came in and she's got a very young, vibrant voice, and she put a voice on it. So we created the whole package really, and then we put it out there, and that's how we met. And then obviously by putting it out there, that's how we came to meet you guys at Musicline.
Okay. Brilliant. Okay. Yeah. And so obviously you just touched on it a little bit, Mike. So what are your roles now in the creative process? Were they defined from the beginning, or is there a bit of a crossover?
I think it's changed because the very first thing that we worked on that we demoed was a musical called Star Chaser, and obviously Janet created that, and I took her ideas and created the orchestrations. And maybe developed some of the songs a little bit, but that was kind of came from you.
It was fairly demarked at the time.
Yeah, so I was just the orchestrator.
Yes, and then once we'd approached Musicline, we then started to work on another show that actually I'd started off with in a school, and that was What's the Crime, Mr. Wolf, although it wasn't called that at the time. And I realised that it needed adapting, and I changed the script, but Mike had more input in that that happens. It's grown like that. I'll approach Mike with the script and the songs, and
with that show, you came to me with the tunes, and we sat. In where we're recording now in my house here and we sat at the piano and we just played through them, and I said, well, that could go like this, and then we started, and I said, well, we could do with a middle eight, that would be cool, and we so it became a bit more organic between the two of us. And then I think by the time we got to The Greatest Show, it was very much a kind of, the idea for it had come from Janet, and the script and the writing, that side, the book side of it, as always, it's not something that you want me to be involved in at all, was from Janet. But then the songs became much more of a kind of we wrote them almost together. At the same time.
Yes.
And then when we got to Gladys, possibly it shifted a little bit further.
Yes.
Because you had ideas for the songs and some lyrics and the occasional snippet of a tune, which you'll send to me as a little voice message on the iPhone, and I'll go, I've got that tune, let's try this.
Whilst you got the dinner cooking.
Yeah, while you got the dinner cooking. And then I kind of developed a lot of the tunes here, and then so it's kind of it's a
it has
mix,
grown.
isn't it?
It's been very organic, and I think Mike also, although he says he doesn't do very much with the writing, he's very good at cutting things. That's what I'll take. If you'd seen what the greatest show had been like to begin with, I had a great big magic show going on and all sorts of things.
Okay.
Cut. No, we don't want that.
Okay.
So it would have run at about 2 hours.
Yeah. You need another pair of eyes. Working in isolation, you can be, if you're not careful, a bit too much tunnel vision, and you do need to, you do need somebody to look at it and say, no, that's not going to work. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
We'll keep that in. So Mike does get involved in the final script, and he does edit it. Often, quite substantially.
Well, that bouncing off is really important.
It is.
Obviously, you sound off a lot of the kind of script ideas with me. Musically, I sound off a lot of the kind of ideas with Janet, but also with my wife and my daughter, who does some of the singing on the tracks. In fact, a lot of the vocals on the tracks for Gladys. And I'll get their idea. My daughter, so when we were writing Gladys, the song that ended up being celebrated, I was trying to write something that was a bit kind of cool, a bit TikTok, and I wrote something, and I was promptly told by my daughter that she's 14 at the moment, is not TikTok, Dad.
No.
And then I was promptly told how things should go, and sent in the right direction. So, having someone to sound off against rather than just writing in isolation is a really massively
important
thing.
It is. And then sometimes things don't work. I mean, I'm on a roll, which I really love now. We had 3 different versions of that because you'd sent me some backing tracks that Mike had created and said, well, what do you think about these? What do you think we can use? What isn't going to work? And I think Celebrated came from one of those originally, I think. Some just got thrown out. We just couldn't use them. But I'm on a roll. I don't know why. We just couldn't get it right for ages.
It took a lot of revisions.
It can be a bit soul-destroying when you spent, hours and hours and hours on something, but you just know it's not hitting the spot.
Yeah. But I think as a creative, you do know that, don't you? You just have that gut feeling that it isn't going to land properly. Back to the drawing board we go.
Yeah.
Can I ask what was the what first inspired the What's the Crime, Mr. Wolf? And you mentioned earlier that it wasn't its original title. What was its original title is my first question.
It was originally called The Case Against Mr. Wolf.
Okay.
And I'd originally written it for part of a school project on the environment. As I say, it's in a very different form now. It had been written as an environmental project, and we'd done studies on wolves and life cycles and all sorts of things like that. And then we looked at debating on, how wolves were being, endangered animals and, the human impact. And it came out of that, and it was actually the culmination of a topic on the environment. At the same time, I was doing different versions of fairy tales, and we'd looked at, some of the, the 3 little pigs and the big bad wolf, and then the 3 bad pigs and the good little wolf, and all those different versions. And I thought, right, that would work really well. We'll take the traditional stories about wolves and turn it on its head and look at different opinions. So that's where it came from originally, and then I thought, well, it would work well in as a sort of a courtroom drama, and that's
it was quite serious when you first showed it to me. It was very, very factual. It was very educational, which there's a lot of teachers out there would approve. But in terms of the entertainment value, I think
it needed
that was
a lot more.
where we just we made a lot of changes to kind of create the humour and that that it provides a nice balance with the show. Yeah.
We had I liked Grandma, the poor little grandma who's vulnerable and alone, quivering in the house, turns out to be a keep fit. I think she's a martial arts instructor. That sort of thing made a bit of fun out of it. And we had the forest police. I mean, the location lends lots of opportunities for jokes. Excuse me. So we had Bark, the police dog from the forest police, and things like that, and Special Branch. So that it lent itself really well.
We went a bit fantastic, didn't we?
We did
got a bit carried away with the puns.
Yeah, but that's a Musicline musical. All the puns. We love the puns. So where would you say that you get inspired? Like, where does the inspiration come from with your storylines? Obviously, would you say it was all schools, or would you say it's been a bit of a mixed bag? So what about The Greatest Show?
Well, The Greatest Show was quite a personal thing, actually. I've always been really interested in Victorian history and particularly the art of entertainment and Victorian entertainments, and how wacky some of them are. And it sort of came from that. I'd done some reading on some of the ridiculous showmen and things that went on, like singing cats. Actually,
it's a real thing.
It's a real thing.
A lot of the actual acts that we have in the show
are real. I didn't make them up.
Real.
There was certainly the time of inventions, to begin with, Victorian inventions were often exhibited by travelling shows. That's where they first got their opportunity to be shown. And I thought, there's so much here that I can use, and that's where it came from. I loved the idea of quack doctors and all the ridiculous medicines and things that they use, and so thought, right, I think we can probably put this together into a show. And then we had and then I wanted to put in a steampunk type element into it, because I thought that would be quite different and quite cool. And really, steampunk is Victorian. It's all based on Victorian that type sort of costumes. And went with it that way, and was really pleased with the way it came out. Again, we had to cut bits and put it together, and that one came out differently. We don't always know musically where it's going to go until we've got the script together, and you look at the characters and you look at the theme of the show, and that became with a whole mixture of genres in that particular show, which we also liked. So we don't do the same thing every time. No, we let the show take us in that direction.
And is that it sort of leads me on to a question for you, really, Mike. Is that sort of when you're looking at music, do you have like a rule of thumb? Is it like I want 2 ballads, 3 big production numbers? Is it a big opener? What sort of thing do you think about, or is it just storyline led?
It's always what serves the work, the story.
Okay.
This music should always. But I mean, I've got a history of working in musical theatre. That's where I come from. I mean, I've been a professional musician all my life, and I've only ever really done that. But for the bulk of my career, I was doing shows, so musicals, either on tour in London on the West End, and you realise when you do those kind of theatre shows that the music is a subservient element in the show. It has to be. It's a bit like writing film music. It's the same thing. If you notice the music, it's kind of it's probably getting in the way. So whenever we start something new, it's always what do we need? The opening number. You generally want an exciting opening number. I mean, starting with a ballad is never the best idea. And ballads, on the whole, I mean, I've done quite a few pantos in my time, commercial pantos, and the rule of thumb is if you put a ballad in a panto, cut it down to no more than 1 minute 30 seconds.
Yes, just about a minute and a half. That's
a minute and a half is max, because children just switch off with ballads. So it's lovely to have a whole new world and all those kind of things, but 4 minutes of that in a children's musical is just going to turn everyone off. So it's just whatever we need to take the kind of develop the plot, and if it needs to be quirky, I mean, stylistically. We bounce in, certainly What's the Crime, Mr. Wolf, and The Greatest Show, we've got a few pastiche things. I mean, the song What an Invention, it's got a kind of almost a half a sixpence kind of flashbang wallet kind of character to it, because it suits the style of the text and what's being told. With Gladis Baker, we complete diversion, because we wanted to write something that felt a bit more kind of modern. I'm not the greatest pop writer in the world. I'll hold my hands up to that. If I was that good at writing,
sorry, little mix, you can't take Mike Horth.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not going to be anytime soon doing that. But you know, that's what we wanted to do, and that gave Gladys kind of much more kind of the character, much more kind of funky, if you like, kind of more modern. That's what we're trying to do, to just get Gladys to be a bit more relatable. So whatever happens, we always need a strong opener and a strong closer and some fun things in between, and we're happy to go pretty much anywhere.
The music's, I think, so important, because every song takes the story forward. We're producing something that's at best an hour and 10 minutes. I mean, we can go on to this later, but the Jingle Book is going to be less than that because it's a Christmas show. But we've got to condense a lot of information without overpowering people in the most economical way possible. And so we've got to get the tone of the music right. The lyrics have to fit. Well, very often I write some ideas of lyrics, and we can get the rhythms from that sometimes. But there aren't any songs that are just. They're all great fun, but they will move the story forward in one way or another.
It's really important, because you can do an awful lot in a 3-minute song that would take you a lot longer in dialogue to achieve. Generally, if you analyse a lot of kind of musicals and really successful musicals, there's a mix of plot development songs and character development songs. We haven't got the time to have each individual character having their own song and telling you about them. So a lot of the songs are kind of to drive the plot through. That's the kind of idea.
And I think as well for children, we know at Musicline that there are a lot of children that are going on YouTube and they're typing in the song that they've been doing in their musical at school to pull it up themselves. And I think it's the one thing that stays with the children more so than the lines that they've delivered. It will be the song that plays in their head. Even the parents, when they're going home, you hope that they've got the song in the back of their head somewhere, that they're humming it when they're doing their tea. So no, I agree completely with the music. I think it is massively important.
Well, it also connects with the whole TikTok. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to mention specific kind of platforms, but yeah, I mean, obviously my daughter uses TikTok, and she often shows me. She said, "Oh, Dad, there's one of your songs. I mean, Mole from What's the Crime, Mr. Wolf?" Ryland did a video of that. If you haven't checked it out on TikTok, if you're on TikTok, check it out,
guys.
That out. It's very, very cool. He's there pointing at the molehills, but it's just people taking our songs and doing random things with them. It's really, really exciting.
It is. It's
to see, and obviously this has to be something about the music that grabs people. It could just be a quirky thing because it's got the word mole in the title. There's an array of videos out there.
But we'll take that. Just next time, Rylan, if you ever hear this, please tag us at Musicline or Michael Jan before using that song. Thank you.
That would be really cool.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so how do you, controversial question, how do you handle differences of opinion? Do you storm out dramatically?
We fight to the death.
Fight to the death. Now that's a very Gladys Baker line in there.
It's got a great custard pie in the face.
So no, how would you handle that difference of opinion? Has it happened yet, or have you?
Lots of it. Sensitively, we're both quite. I don't know how to.
We do have differences of opinion, but I think
I'm a bit more hot-headed, possibly.
He's a musician. He's going to be hot-headed. They're known for it.
My rule of thumb is that we're not going to publish something that we're both not 100% happy with it. Now, Mike might suggest something to me. Occasionally, I'll send. I mean, one of the good examples is "What's the Crime, Mr. Wolf?" Misunderstood. The song about the baby wolves, and I'd written the lyrics. I was really pleased with the lyrics, and I had a tune for them. This was earlier on in our sort of partnership, and Mike came back with a completely different arrangement
to what you'd imagined.
To what I'd imagined, and I thought, oh no.
Well, I was trying. I took the song and felt that it wanted to be kind of icy and. So I used all these different sounds, these kind of icy sounds, and I think it blindsided you a little bit. You were like,
really
what on earth is this? Isn't what I imagined in my head. And I think that's when we generally have differences of opinion, it's because it's not what one of us was expecting, the direction we were expecting to go. So, but generally we either adapt and meet in the middle somewhere, or actually maybe you thought, actually this is quite good.
I think
I've had a similar thing sometimes with maybe a lyric that you've written, and I've gone, I'm not sure about that, and then actually when I've thought about it, I thought, actually, that does
that's
work.
Okay. And I think it's just a case of taking a bit of time over it and not going with your gut reaction. I mean, anything like this, it's terribly personal. It's like being an artist. You know, if you've got people criticising your work, even if it's somebody you work with, and you've put a lot into it, and then suddenly they go, oh no, and. You've got to be careful not to be too sensitive about it. But to be honest, I mean, we have differences of opinion, but it's not very often that I've sort of felt really hurt by. Well,
I think it's nice because I think you've both. It really seems that you've got a really good partnership in the fact that you've got this sort of overlapping area where you both are involved in each other's part of the process, which I think is really nice, and that's probably where the respect lies as well, for each other's work. Because I think Jan, you've already mentioned you don't do the music, and Mike, you've already said you couldn't write like Jan.
No, I couldn't write. I do. I have written some lyrics, and I have got the occasional bit of dialogue. I've managed to shoehorn in past Janet's high standards.
He puts in the funny bits.
But I try and but I think you realise when you stray into an arena that you're not so good at, you then appreciate people like Janet. She writes these lyrics and I just get them and I go, yeah, great. But actually, when you writing lyrics is really hard, especially the kind of the old kind of crafting a song that you go back to the writers like kind of Cole Porter and those kind of people in the old days who really crafted lyrics, and it's a real skill in that. It's a very different thing to writing an emotional kind of outpouring like I mean, I talked to my daughter about this with the Taylor Swift song. She's a big Taylor Swift fan, and she writes in a kind of it's just a kind of outpouring, a continuation of without necessarily the same structure, and Janet writes in a kind of, I don't want to say more old-fashioned, but a more conventional way possibly. And that's a hard art form to do. It's not, people think, well, that's
I'm not aware of it being hard, to be honest. I like to make sure that there's regular rhyme schemes in it, because I don't sacrifice that in terms of the integrity of the song, but it makes it easier to learn. It gives a rhythm to a rhythm to the song, and it just. I'm also careful not to dumb down with language. I am actually an English teacher, and English has always been my great love, and I do love to be able to try and put words in that maybe children haven't come across that often, and I hope that they might think, oh yeah, that's a word
that I hadn't come across.
Yeah. And I don't know, sometimes I wonder, is it, should I be being quite so wordy? But as long as it doesn't become sort of turgid or pompous, I think it's nice to introduce language, different sort of words and language to children that they may not.
It's always a balancing act, isn't it? With What an Invention, the song in The Greatest Show, that's really, really wordy, and it's quite hard to deliver. So it's making sure that it's funny and entertaining, and the words are just very, very clever with that, but we have to then balance it as well, which is, again, going back to kind of disagreements and things. Yeah,
bearing in mind school children are having to deliver
words. And we generally know when we come to record the vocals for the tracks. Obviously, we have the backing tracks and then we have the vocal tracks as well. And my daughter will sing on a lot of things, and then we'll get other children in to do the vocals, and you can tell straight away how difficult something is. And the verses in that song in particular, we had several kids try them, and they tripped, and we tried to cobble them together and edit them, and in the end my daughter Anna did all the verses in the end, and it just because it was so it's always a balance, isn't it? But,
I mean, I think they're singable. In terms of being precise when you're recording, of course, it's very different to when you're singing on stage.
Absolutely.
So I mean, for Mike to get spot on recordings, they had to be absolutely in time.
And you wouldn't expect that from a school, because that's not what our children go to school to do in their musicals.
That's right.
Do that? They're not. They're there to have fun. They're there to belt them as they see fit across the school hall.
It's all about enjoying it, and I do think children love words, and they like long words, and they like funny little patterns in words too.
They do.
And I hope that all.
And I think it's nice that you include words that the children may need to question with a teacher, because again, that's what you said. You are a teacher, so you're encouraging children to keep learning. Yeah. Yes, it's fun, but we want them to also be learning at the same time.
But the enjoyment things are just as a little kind of aside, a little kind of tale, because sometimes you sit here and you write, and you forget that these things are going to be in an actual school with a whole group of lively kids who are going to be having a fabulous time doing this. And it brought it home to me. I was out with my wife last year, and we were just walking footpaths and just out for a little hike on a day off, and we parked up in a village around here, and opposite the car park was opposite a school, and we got out of the car, and my wife said, "I can hear singing," and then she said, "They're singing The Greatest Show, the opening song," and I was like, so they are. So we actually walked over to the school, and I did a really straight, probably you're not supposed to necessarily just walk up to the school these days, but I just headed over to the reception and said, "Hi, I'm Mike. I just wanted to say I've just heard the kids singing the opening song, and I just wanted to say I'm one of the writers for that." And the reception staff were very excited, and they said, "Oh, we'll have to go and get Mr. I can't remember the gentleman's name," and he came out with the entire class into the corridor, and they were absolutely buzzing about it. And I was able to ask them questions about what is your favourite character. I think it was Obadiah Blastpipe was the kind of, and just about what was fun and what wasn't fun, and I think most of it seemed to be fun.
Yeah,
and I think we got invited
I went to see the show, and they invited me, and that was a real thrill.
Yeah,
It's
lovely to see. But that's the thing as writers, that at the back of your mind, you've got to remember who you're writing for, and at the end, and what it's for, and it's for whole groups of kids to have fun.
Absolutely.
And if we lose sight of that, then it's...
I feel like that should have been like the end of this podcast, because what a lovely note to finish on, but it's not the end.
Okay.
But no, that is lovely, and I think the fact, like, Jan, that you went along to watch as well, I bet that was really humbling to see.
It was.
Yeah.
And it was great to see how the school had taken the script and adapted it for their needs.
And I think that's what's nice about Musicline Musicals, and I think in particular, the shows and the musicals you guys have done, they are all adaptable. Definitely. And they are absolutely to be taken, and then the school to be used in the way that they see fit. Yeah, absolutely, make it their own, because as we know that every school is run completely different. Every school has different children, and I think that's what's really nice. I particularly liked that about Gladis Baker. I really noticed that the way that it could be adapted with Gladys. So can I ask you why? What was it that made you approach Musicline? What was it about Musicline that you particularly liked?
Well, that was that would have been me. I got a phone call when I submitted. It was Star Chaser, the script that actually hasn't been published, but because they already had something very similar in their catalogue. But it's when I spoke to Musicline, and they invited us in to come and talk to them. And what was lovely about them was there's a lovely family atmosphere within the company, and they want to work with you and share. That we were able to do most of it ourselves, because we we knew what we were doing. But they would have supported us. They would have helped us. They would have made suggestions. Very welcoming and just a great company to work with.
I think it was just nice to be invited in for a meeting, given that they'd obviously seen a piece that we'd written, which was kind of finished and quite whole. Realised that they didn't really have a place in the catalogue for that,
but knew you guys did.
But knew that perhaps there's some potential in maybe and just getting us in to have a chat and saying, "Are you going to write anything else?" And we were like, "Well, yes, definitely." And then it kind of went from there, which was really good. But yeah, I mean, having talking to them as well about their kind of criteria that they'd like writers to kind of think about, and made us kind of question again in a positive way how we go about things, and and how we structure things, and how much humour was in. The Star Chaser was very serious. More serious than Mr. Wolf and stuff. But then we kind of thought, well, we've got to remember
we learnt a lot
entertainment
from them,
rather than just education.
I remember one thing was, try and make as many visual puns as possible rather than spoken puns. Make it funny on stage, just with the actions, things like that that were going to really relate to children, and so that they could. Very often, I think you've got to be careful with too many puns, because we are looking at small children, and you've got the sense of delivery and is that joke going to gladys over? Whereas if you can do it visually,
then it's always much better,
it's more effective.
Such as the kitty litter.
Yes,
Gladis Baker.
Do you like that?
Yeah, I think it's brilliant.
That little ditty was Mike's, actually. He said, "Oh, that's very familiar rhythm." He said,
"We kind of knew we needed an ad break, and we thought, well, what the adverts were the kind of those 1950s American adverts that you see. They're really kind of stylized and iconic. It's got a bit of the kind of bewitched theme about it, that kind of American housewife kind of thing, which obviously doesn't stand up now, but back in the day. So we kind of wanted to go down that route with that kind of music, and having an actual voiceover so that the kids could mime to that, and you get a visual gag from them miming to it. Again, my daughter loved doing the advert voice. We had a great time doing that.
Yeah, we did.
And we sent it into the office actually as a kind of just to cheer everyone up on a Friday afternoon one day. Have a listen to this, and the feedback was good. So it's fun.
That was the nice thing about Gladys, in as much as you asked earlier about the musical themes or the genres that we use, and the script takes us in that direction. But of course, we couldn't make everything Roman in terms of of Gladys, so we decided to go.
Well, musically, that's why we kind of let's bring this up to date, because
there's only so many fanfares you can have.
Well, exactly. I mean, Roman music. What is Roman music?
Absolutely.
Lyres and drums, harps, and it's not going to be the most exciting.
We've got Ninius on the harp, but about that, other than that, no. So we thought, well, we've got carte blanche here, really, and we can do what we like, as long as, obviously within reason. So that's why it's different again musically to the other two shows that we've produced.
Yeah.
And nice that you can show the difference, that there is a clear difference, because it's not, it would be, it's good because a school returning for some of your work, say for, a school took The Greatest Show last year, you'd want them to come back and have something very different.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the same school, so because they enjoyed, the process and what you guys have to offer. So what would you say, this is probably going to be a really difficult question to answer actually, but what's the sort of timeline for the whole process? So from the original idea to the first draft that's given to Musicline that's ready to go. Is there a timeline, or is it very much?
To be honest, we joke about this because Janet's always got more ideas. She's coming at me all the time. I've got this idea, this fantastic idea, and I'm like, I can't process that now, Janet, because I'm still working on idea number one. I think it's generally the ideas for you come pretty. When they come.
They're just random,
and then the scripts you tend to start just writing and going, and you'll send me a kind of almost a finished version of the script really, really quickly. Then, from my perspective, the time input, I still work doing various things, and still a lot of things in music that I do for paying the bills, so I have to kind of prioritise that kind of part of my life and try and fit in the writing around that. So my time is generally what slows everything down. But we try. We've got more process to it now.
Yeah, I think we have.
We've got an idea. We're much more structured. We tend to have little meetings and see where we are and what we and plan and try and create deadlines for ourselves so that we can move things along.
Does Jan give you dates? Does she say this is how long you've got?
No, not quite.
Perhaps I need to.
Maybe you need
to be a little bit more. Yes.
One of the hardest things is, I think, one of the things that not slows things down, but it can be a bit of a stop in the bottleneck, if you like, is when we're creating the tracks. I can do that in my own time. That's all done in the studio here. But when we need to record the children, that's the hardest thing, because it's trying to get the right children to be able to come at the right time with school commitments and everything else. And sometimes you have to just concede that you're not going to be able to do anything until you get to the Easter holidays or until you get to the summer holidays. So sometimes you're ready to record, but you've got to wait another 2 months to find that availability with the children, because they're not just on tap.
No.
So that can be a challenge. But everybody, I think all the writers that write for Musicline, they all work in different ways with getting children just to come and sing the songs. And so it's important that they have time to learn them and that they also enjoy the process. You don't want to have them here make them stand for 12 hours while you get it absolutely
Your daughter's
perfect.
done a lot of the singing on the tracks, hasn't she?
She does she's done an awful lot for us, really. She's on
very
Mr.
talented.
Wolf, she was a bit too young. She still sounded, I think when we recorded Gladys, she'd have been about 11 or 12, and now she's 14. So, and she's done some demos on the latest thing that we're working on already, but there'll come a point where she starts to sound unlike a child and
start saying, "Dad, you need to start paying me."
Well, if we're truthful, we do that a little bit. So,
Yes.
we incentivise. So.
Well, you've got to, with your own children doing it for you, haven't you? Which, no, she has a lovely voice, and if anyone hasn't heard her, what's her name? Anna. If anyone hasn't heard Anna sing, then check out the tracks. You can see the previews on the Musicline website.
We should also just while we're a shout out to kind of the people taking part. My wife is also on the recordings. I don't know if you know that.
No.
She is the
an excellent chicken.
Wow.
It depends on the hens. The song. You'll notice there are some chickens making noises in the background, and in particular at the end there's a chicken laying an egg.
Okay.
Which is all down to my wife. And that was a complete one-take wonder. I was just talking to her about what I needed to get somebody to sound like a chicken and lay an egg, and I put her in front of the mic and said, "Can you just do a chicken impression?" And she grew up on a farm. She's a farmer's daughter, so
She'd be
clearly
delighted
been
with
doing
that
chicken
credit,
impressions a
Mike.
lot.
Absolutely.
But it was brilliant, and
I think she'd be really happy for the mention.
Straight in. So there's a shout out to my wife Barbara.
And also, Mike will be leading
Chicken.
how to have a healthy marriage podcast, which can be found on another platform. Get your wife to be the chicken. I love that. Bless her. So, yes, you've had obviously been very busy. And I know that you mentioned you've got new work. You mentioned it earlier. How far along in the process are we? So it's now the 5th of March, 2024.
We are quite near the end. We've the script is complete.
Yeah.
The book and the lyrics.
Production
The
notes
songs
are
are all written. The initial tracks are all kind of made and ready, and my daughter's already put her vocal parts down. And we've got some recording sessions already scheduled for the Easter holidays in the next 5 weeks to put all the other children's voices on. And as soon as that's done, it's just a question of mixing the tracks, getting all the kind of post-production work done and having them mastered. And we shouldn't be too far away. I think we're aiming to finish by May.
Yes.
Beginning of May, and have it sent over to the guys at Musicline, who then I know you guys have a lot to do before. There's a lot. That's a
There's
whole
all the
other
artwork,
there's a whole other thing that we have to do
and
ourselves.
then hopefully to release that in time for Christmas.
There's no hopefully about it.
There's no hopefully, okay.
It's a Christmas musical.
It has to be out.
It is a Christmas musical. Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about the plot and what it is? Are you allowed to?
I imagine I am.
I'll let you. Just this once. Yeah, just this once.
Thank you. Well, it's called The Jingle Book, and it's a Christmas fantasy about this magical book that some children discover in a second-hand books stall at a Christmas fair. And this book has particular powers that lead them on a quest to the North Pole. But they don't really know why they're having to do this, although they believe in it. And they have
You're not going to give the spoiler. You're not
no,
don't give it.
No spoiler alert.
Can't say how it ends. But
There's various characters they meet on the way. So it's Narnia-esque. It's quite funny in parts. And a little bit of The Box of Delights, which is an old John Masefield book. It's all that magical fantasy type set in a snowy environment.
Yeah.
And musically, it's quite a departure because it's completely orchestral, which some people will get a bit scared as soon as you hear. Like, it's not Beethoven or anything, kind of anything like that. But it's all.
It's quite
produced with
Disney-esque,
it sounds a little bit kind of Disney-esque. If you think about maybe musicals like Scrooge or The Muppets Christmas Carol.
Yeah, I heard a couple of samples of the music, and that's The Muppets Christmas Carol is the first thing, and Christmas Chronicles is the other one. Yeah. There was lots of things, like you said, that popped up into my head. I'm a huge sucker for Christmas. Absolutely love Christmas, and obviously musicals as well. So this, I'm so excited for the Jingle Book, and it sounds like something I think children will really love to do, and I think because of children being, loving the nativity film as well, that of children doing a Christmas musical, I think there's lots of opportunity in there for Christmas. I think a lot of schools do the nativity story, and we do have lots of nativities, which are great, but there's not really much out there for Key Stage 2, and I think that's what would be really nice about the Jingle Book, if it can go for the rest of the school.
That's certainly what we're hoping for, and it's a slight departure because there's only 5 songs in this show rather than 7 or 8, and we've done that on purpose because we know that if you're putting on a Christmas musical in a school, you really can't start rehearsing until after half term, and you've not got as much time to put it together as you would, say, an end of year show.
It's a really busy term for teachers.
I know you're well into the curriculum. There's a lot to get through, so. We've purposely made it'll only be about 50 minutes as a show.
Affair,
but that's so nice for, I think, teachers to hear, because it shows how thought through that is, and that it's not just buy this 2-hour-long musical, you're going to have a fabulous time, because we always want the teachers to enjoy the process of creating the show, because some teachers, they are the designated musical creator, aren't they, within their school, but we also understand that there are teachers out there that are not necessarily thrilled to be given the role of creating the musical, which is obviously why we have things like Sing It and Project It and all of the tools to really help a school with the process, because we want to make it enjoyable, I think, is the main thing. But the fact that they know that they've got a shorter version so they can get it done in time, I think it's a brilliant thing that you've done and so thought through.
Yeah, and the songs are, again, they're all, I think, no more than 2 minutes long. So again, just the songs are great. I think they're really good.
Honestly, we're really
they are.
They're very catchy, and and they're very Christmassy as well. That's the great thing about working with a kind of orchestral palette, is you can get that kind of really kind of Christmassy vibe about it. There's lots of kind of Celeste and bells and glockenspiels and all those kind of tinkly sounds, which are really, really lovely. But bringing the songs in, just having 5 of them and having them a little bit shorter, with plenty of repetition, catchy choruses that come back time and time again. that the kids only have to learn one set of lyrics for, it's a much easier proposition for schools to kind of put on. Yeah. And for kids to remember at that time of year, then they'll be doing other things for Christmas as well. There's generally so much going on.
Busy time.
That kids, everyone's heads are full.
Yeah.
So throwing too much information, giving information overload is what we're trying to avoid. Yeah,
brilliant. What would you say are some of the difficult things that you find working with Musicline? What are the difficult things that you if there is any, you know?
Wow, that's a good question. That's
blindsided me a bit. I would say for us, the most difficult thing is getting the children's voices recorded. To be honest, the script. That's always the thing that takes the time, isn't it?
Because I'm used to doing other projects, and I still do quite a lot of writing for cruise ship shows. So I'll do some click tracks with backing vocals on, and that's really easy because I can just get friends of mine who are session singers, just pay them to come in, and they just come whenever you want and just do it, and I can turn it. I can get somebody in tomorrow to record something, but that's the kind of complicating factor because we. Musicline like to use children's voices because and I can completely understand that why because it helps for teachers to imagine how these songs are going to fit on their children, which is really, really useful. But obviously for us it's harder as well because you get somebody who maybe can sight read, a professional singer can come in. You don't have to rehearse them. They just come in and
do it there and
then. When Amy did the Star Chaser things for us, she just came in and read them, and we recorded all of the songs, all 8 songs, in 1 3-hour session, completely done. Whereas for most of the children we need 1 or 2 3-hour sessions with each child.
And for the children themselves, to have on the headphones and be in a recording booth and possibly in a little room on their own, it's a massive experience for them. And obviously, and Mike is very particular, and they do have to sing really, really accurately. So that's probably the hardest part of it, really. Yeah,
and that sounds difficult, and it is. Generally, I think it is difficult working with children. So we can sympathise then for the teachers who are then having to actually create the musicals in the end part of the process. And obviously, Jan, from working in a school. But no, I think it was a good answer to a question.
Well, I think if there was another thing that's it's not a problem, but is it more an inconvenience? Is the fact that we're not quite so close to the office, to the Musicline office.
Physically?
Physically, for face-to-face. I mean, so you guys are in Tamworth and we're in Oxfordshire, and it's only an hour and a bit, but sometimes it's useful just to be able to pop in and do the face-to-face stuff, but we don't get to see everyone.
And I think
quite so often.
Yeah, and I think there must be lots of people that are musicians or writers in the world that are having to do that all of the time and having to use, online, which nothing sounds the same through, a video call either, does it? You can play a piece of music and it just doesn't land the same as to sitting around a table and putting it
like this today.
Exactly.
I mean, we've spoken a number of times on the phone and on video calls and things, but actually to see somebody in there, it's
nice. It is nice. I think we take it for granted, don't we? Actually, physically getting face to face with people. So, a question for you, Jan. First of all, would you have any advice for any people that are, considering writing? Would you have any advice for them from what you've learnt in your journey as a writer? Have you got any advice for any of those budding writers out there?
Now then, let me have a think. I mean, I would say I had no formal training for writing. A love of story, the thought of characters. I think you need to think about the characters that you're going to use. You do need a plot, but I have to be honest, when I start to write a show, I don't necessarily have it all in my head. Once I start writing, it takes you there, and the way you start, the characters, you have your set of characters, they'll start to interact, and you'll see that they'll offer you possibilities.
Okay.
And then, the way I work, I let the show take me there. I might have a rough sort of chapter idea of where I'm going with it, but sometimes I don't even have that. It just grows organically.
So do you think it's a very unique process that differs from one writer to another?
I think probably, yes. I'm sure you know if you asked Craig or Steve, they would probably tell you something completely different. They probably work very differently, but that's the way I've worked, and it just works for me. I'm not one to have. I mean, Musicline like us to produce a synopsis of when we approach them with a show. They like a synopsis of every chapter. Well, I do that, but I've written the show before I've written the synopsis because I can't do that. I can't tell you what's going to happen until it
evolves.
Evolves. That's the right word.
Yeah, because things are different. One idea will take you in a different direction, and also you come to me and show me something where you've got to, and I'll go, oh, but it could go this way.
Yes.
And then we're like, oh, and then all of a sudden, if you've produced it, there's nothing worse than pitching for something and putting in a synopsis as a kind of pitch. Here's our idea. Is this good? Yes, it's good. Go ahead and write this. And then you're kind of stuck to working in that framework. It can be quite restrictive.
Yes.
So actually having that kind of free, that's one of the good things about working with Musicline.
Well, it is. And actually Musicline, they know that I do that, and they would... and also, I think I would feel that I need to have something that I would hate to give them something that didn't really work anyway. I'd like to know that they were happy with it. Even if I do change a few bits, they're quite flexible.
And have you ever had, just this question just come to me right now, have you ever had a character that's completely changed? So you've had their purpose, what their agenda is within the story, and then as you've started to write, you've thought, well, hang on a minute, that I've actually even softened the character, or they've become the villain in the story. Has that happened?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
But only once, and it's in the Jingle Book.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And the idea actually came from Mike, although I don't know whether he realises that.
Don't tell him.
It's just something
Can I
he
have
said.
that as a credit, please?
And it's something that he said, and I thought, yeah.
And it planted the seed. Oh, okay, that's interesting.
But we can't give too much away on that.
No, you can't. And if anyone wants to know about, you've got to, come back in September and you'll know everything about Jingle Book then.
It'll be there.
Yeah, we'll be talking about Christmas. Okay, what about for you, Mike? Is there any advice? Obviously, being a musician, and you've talked today that you run choirs, that you've done cruise ship work, that you've done MD on, lots and lots of things. So what advice would you give to any musicians that are currently sat in their box room with their little recording device and their keyboard? What advice have you got for musicians?
It's so hard because it's so personal. It depends where you've come from, what kind of journey you're on. But I think the biggest thing probably is just to have confidence in what you're doing and belief in what you're doing. And I'm quite a kind of nervous isn't the right word, but I'm a bit of a doubter. I'm always doubting. I mean, I always did when I was playing theatre shows. I mean, I could be conducting a show in a theatre in London, and then I'd be doubting. Oh, did I get? Was I good enough? Was I clear enough on that beat? Did I? And just forget the doubts and forget the fear, because that's the enemy. Just do what you think is right. Go with it. Make that decision. Write that idea. Just do it. Don't let your kind of inner demons kind of restrict you. Just let it out. And also, probably, this is probably because I'm getting a little bit older. I'm not allowed to say that I've got a big birthday coming up this year.
I won't get
you can all. And I think if I had my time again, I'd make more use of my time when I was younger. And I know this probably goes the same for everybody in every kind of career, just in people's lives. You think of all the time you had when you were young, when you didn't have to worry about children and families and jobs and mortgages and everything else, and you had all this free time to create. And I wish I did make had a good stab at it, but I think, I could have done more with this, I could have done more with that. It's not a regret, but so if there was a bit of advice, just make the most of the time you got and just go with your ideas. And if you want to do something, just go for it.
I think that's some pretty good advice there.
It's very vague, I'm sorry. It's not very specific
it's some good advice. And if you had a magic wand and you could wish for anything for the relationship in the future with Musicline and the musicals that you've done, what do you think that would be? What would you wish for?
Wow. Oh, I don't know.
A magic. Oh, no, you've stumped us now.
We might need to take a break while we have considered thoughts on this.
For me, it would be that I still keep getting the ideas and that Musicline are good with them, because I absolutely love what I'm doing. And, you know, but it depends on, you know, are the ideas all going to continue to come and are they going to be the right ones?
Okay, and what about you, Mike? You've just had a solid 45 seconds to think of a response there.
No response, no, nothing at all.
Just that people buy your musicals and continue to love them. I suppose
that would be a really satisfying thing. Yeah, I mean, just to keep the joy going. You know, just keep people buying them, performing them, enjoying performing them. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's what we want to hear about that as well. I don't know if this ever gets talked about, but so often schools will put on productions and they'll have a great time doing it, and the headmaster will come out at the end, or the headmistress, and will thank everyone involved and say what a brilliant thing this was, and how we've all had such a great time, and the parents all take that in, and people around the school. But we seldom get to hear about that, and we love to get messages and feedback, and even if it's people saying, yeah, your show is rubbish, I'm never buying one of your shows again. I
don't think anybody's ever said that about
we've
any
never
of
had that
songs.
But it would be lovely.
But it would be good to know if there were certain things that didn't work in certain settings, and you know, we'd use that information.
So constructive criticism,
even just sharing the joy. I mean, there are some videos of our shows on YouTube. I'm not sure how many of them are licensed or clear.
I'm sure they all are.
Of course, I'm sure, absolutely. And actually, it's really nice because we've sat and watched a few productions of Mr. Wolf that from random schools that we just found on YouTube, and it's great because you get to make that link, and it just stops us being two people sat in rooms in houses writing stuff. We actually remember what it's for and know that the kids are enjoying it.
And how nice is that? It's a great feeling. It's a great feeling. I can imagine. And even my role at Musicline, and I do spend a lot of time looking on YouTube and on you know, Facebook and everything, and looking at people's videos of what they're producing, and it is wononderful to see children enjoying themselves.
Walking past a random school in the middle of the Oxfordshire countryside and hearing one of your songs being sung. It's a really great feeling personally. You know, it's wow. I wrote that, and it's fabulous. So it's just great to hear that that's going on.
I think from the children's point of view, I've never been in any situation where the majority of children haven't loved putting on a school musical, and they find things out about themselves that perhaps they didn't know, and other people, the other children, find things out about themselves, and the high that they get from it, you know, after a show, and their parents come to see them, and it's great for self-esteem.
It is.
It's just a thoroughly lovely thing to do.
The stage buzz is something that if you could bottle it up and sell it, you'd be a millionaire. That feeling. But no, I agree completely, and I think it's not just that. I think it's the working as a team.
Yes.
There's other roles as well backstage that are really important in shows. So you don't always have to have, and this is for all the teachers out there, you don't have to have a classroom full of performers. You know, if you've got your students who are just absolutely not into the singing and the dancing, that's fine as well. There's lots of things that they can do, you know, within the musical to be part of it, such as making the props and the stagehand and all of the other things. The techies, not enough techies in the world. But yeah, no, that's brilliant. So have you already, obviously we've talked a little bit about Jingle Book, have you already thought about next year? 2025.
I'm sure Janet has. I've not. No.
Okay.
I'm buried, obviously, in the moment just finishing off the Jingle Book. That's kind of top of my to-do list, and I know Janet's probably already written 3 more shows.
Have you, Janet? Have you got?
No, I've got ideas percolating for the next one.
Okay.
And I usually actually take. You'd asked earlier about how the shows come about. I usually take a year just thinking about something before I really or maybe not one thing. I've got 3 or 4 things buzzing around, and eventually I'll settle on one of them.
Okay, brilliant. And then the other question, I think this is my final question, actually, for today, is do you think you'll always stay as a duo? Do you think the 2 of you will stay together doing this, or would you be open to expanding your team or splitting off separately?
Well, I mean, from my perspective, writing this kind of work, I don't imagine necessarily doing that with anybody else. It's not to say that I can't and wouldn't in the future, but I certainly couldn't go about writing these shows like this on my own. I think that would be, even if I suddenly swallowed or got that magic wand out, and somebody just sprinkled some actual word writing talent, I don't think, I wouldn't want to put something like this together on my own.
I think what I've learnt from you guys today, because I think I want, for me, I've wanted to gain things from these podcast recordings as well. I think I now have a better understanding of you two as a partnership, and I think that's exactly what you guys are. I think you are a really strong partnership. The way that you work together, even in the answering of your questions, I think you it's very clear how well you work together, and I think ultimately it's going to always come through with the quality of the musical. And I think from when I read Gladis Baker, Gladiator, all I wanted to do was do the voices of the characters, as I've done previously on other work. And I think for me as an actor, that was something I would be excited to bring that alive. And I'm, in my 30s, so let alone what a child would think at school. So I think the quality of what you guys do, I think you have a brilliant balance of some really good music that underpins a fantastic, fun story that is really for everybody. So yeah, I think well done, guys.
It's good to hear. Thank you.
It is good to hear.
And I'm very, very excited for Jingle Book, because I am very well known of playing Mrs. Claus at Christmas or an elf in my acting job that I also do.
There'll be a part for you then, definitely.
Oh, thank you. But I absolutely, I love it, and I think it definitely has a place in schools during that time period, and I think everybody will want it. Absolutely, and it'll be my job to make sure it sells.
Well, that'd be
good,
lovely.
fantastic.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And yeah, hopefully I can come back next year and we can talk some more
About the Jingle Book.
That'll be really good.
Absolutely.
Happy days.
Brilliant. Thank
Thanks.
you.